Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm your presenter, Mina Rzouki. And since we're still without my co-presenter, I'd like to introduce my guests. Raphael Honigstein and Andy Brassell are here with me today. It's been an interesting week of football. Cristiano Ronaldo is sad and he claims it's not about the money. Meanwhile, his mentor has, or should we say his idol, has moved to Sydney FC. I'm still not over the fact that Bentner's at Juve, whilst PSG have finally a reason to celebrate. They won their first match in the league. Guys, let's kick it off and straight to Italy, just because we have to have a few minutes to speak about Zdeněk Zeman. What did you guys make of that game? I know it's old news, but it's still something that we continue to talk about because it was possibly one of the most enthralling games you've seen.
I'm just happy that you pronounced the name so carefully, his last name. But no, it was very enthralling. It was very exciting. Of course, it was a big test for Roma and his new Roma and his way of playing. But I'm not sure if it told us more about Roma or more about Inter.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, Inter just looked very shambolic, and you wonder if that really was a test after all.
Do you think that it was just a case of they made it just so easy, and especially made it easy on Totti, who likes to drift into the middle, and considering the fact that they thought most of the action would happen down the wing, so they sort of left the centre free. Therefore, you had wonderful vertical passes going through, and you could see that from the second goal. So do you think that, you know, Stramaccioni has a lot to worry about with Inter, or do you think he just simply got his tactics wrong for this game?
I think he has something to work on. Of course, he has to become tactically adaptable as well. But I think, you know, you could get a false impression off the first game against Pescara because it's quickly becoming clear that Pescara are going to be very weak, talking to Zeman, moving on, and the players they lost like Immobile, Verratti, of course, who's doing a really good job at PSG now. So I think it's going to take time, but I don't think all Roma's problems are solved either. I think there's work to do there, but you know, I think it's going to be an entertaining journey.
You know what? One of the actual newspapers wrote that the greatest tactical mistake that Stramaccioni did was not to expose Roma's fragility at the back. Do you think that's true? They looked very exposed.
Well, I'm sure he tried to, although I don't think he went into the team meeting saying, you know, do not expose Roma's back. You know, that's not the game we want to play. So I think that Roma's game was just caught an Inter side that don't know how to deal with that. And I think it really is both a reflection of a game plan coming to fruition in Zeman's case, but also Inter perhaps not being collectively settled enough to come up against a side that has both individual and collective quality. They look very short.
So what do you think this says about Inter? Do you think that this is something to worry about, or?
Well, I think there's a vast contrast between their home form and their away form. I think
so is it? He said it was psychological.
Well, maybe it is, but it's a problem that they certainly have to nip in the bud. Defending properly would help, and as you say, they were very, very vulnerable in the middle, which are clearly susceptible to pace. I think particularly you look at the Osvaldo goal, and you know he's a striker who will bully you if you let him. I think that was certainly the case. The fact that, as you say, they couldn't really handle Totti dropping off. I don't really know whether he was deliberately dropping off or that he did have a very good game, or whether he just can't keep up with the pace of the other players. But it really suited him the way it worked out anyway. And you know, but Totti's been doing what he's been doing for over a decade. You know, that they're not exactly not forewarned of what he's like. And you know, of course, Silvestri's got something on his hands because they're partnered with Ranocchia, who you have to wonder, is he ever going to get any better?
There's just no pace in that back, and they insist on a high line. All of them insist on a high line.
You can play a high line if you have good pressing in midfield, but if you have a high line without any pressing and no speed, no pace at the back, then that's asking for trouble against a good side. Against the weaker sides, you know, it gives you license to dominate the game. They will sit deep, so it's easy to play the high line in that sense. But against a side that A, knows how to deal with the ball, but also is very good without the ball, you're asking for trouble.
Well, how do you think that Zeman's come back? Now, he's always been accused of being sort of this guy that puts out a wonderful team, and it's, you know, so exciting, 4-3-3. He likes to have 3 players, you know, in the box, 2 midfields running up, you know, attack all the time. But he's never really been one to win major trophies. So do you think that, you know, his lack of concentration on defence, although I still think that, you know, he does concentrate on it. It just probably hasn't come out now. But do you think that he will manage it this year to provide a real challenge to Juventus?
Well, I think maybe it's a bit soon to challenge Juventus, because, you know, they've started the season very strongly and they look like they've carried on that team ethic from last year, as we were saying last week. I think the thing that makes me think that Roma can do good things, firstly, I think Zeman coming is very important, because after what happened with Luis Enrique, they need another project that they can believe in, an ideal. I think that's very, very important. But I think the one plus that Zeman's got, even if they've got certain fragility at the back, and that's something they've got to work on, they've got players in midfield who can keep the ball, and that's really, really important. The fact that De Rossi stayed is important. The fact that Pjanic, who play at the weekend, is there as well. You've got Michael Bradley, someone who can really handle himself. You've got a really good mix of players who can help control the game, and I think that will help lead them forward through the rest of the season.
And now he's also integrated his youth players, of course, one of them scoring the goal for Fiorenzi in midfield. And that's probably the best player to kind of have to translate his tactics onto the pitch, because he's going to be listening to everything that Zeman says. But you were talking about Juventus and the fact they obviously won 4-1 against Udinese. It looked like it would be easy just because 12 minutes later the competition ended.
When Berkic went off. Yeah.
Exactly, sent off. Really harsh red card. Definitely a penalty. Definitely a harsh red card. But do you not think that they were a bit complacent at the back towards the end? You know, do they still have that team ethic? Is my question.
I think the game, as you said, the game was over. So it's tough to keep up that.
Yeah, but Juventus last season would have kept it up until the last minute.
I don't know. I mean, 4-1 is pretty emphatic.
You would be surprised how many people moaned about the fact that they didn't walk away with a clean sheet.
But really, it's more about the fact that poor old Udinese.
Maybe that's a very Italian viewpoint. You know, only 4-1. We can't believe it. They conceded a goal. Terrible.
Udinese were completely dispirited. You know, they needed some sort of
hangover from the Champions League.
Yeah, they needed some sort of bump after that.
Yeah, I think so.
But what about, okay, so they, you know, they're now the highest goal-scoring team in Europe, in Italy, and they don't have the star striker that they've been moaning about all summer long. Do you think something can be done with Mirko Vucinic and Giovinco? They're both second strikers. Giovinco actually plays more as a prima punta between the two, so as the front one, and Vucinic is just off him on the right.
But they've got players all over the pitch who can score goals. And
Yeah.
I think that's very, very important. You know, you saw even before Berkic went off, like in the first 5 minutes, Lichtsteiner was there in the penalty box, you know, receiving a shot and lobbing over the bar. And, you know, people talk about, say, Mathieu Debuchy in France, but, you know, Lichtsteiner is as good as it gets as far as attacking fullbacks go, and especially attacking right backs go. You know, they've got Vidal, who's developed that more box-to-box element to his game, so he's getting in the penalty box and scoring goals too. They've got Marchisio, Giovinco got on the score sheet, as you said. So maybe it's not all about the strikers. It goes back to that question of team ethic.
Yeah, I think we'll see the same pattern probably repeated. They might struggle against the better sides to score, but their work ethic will create so many chances against the lesser teams that they'll find a way to win games. The problem I have, I think, will be in the Champions League. I think they needed that bigger, stronger
name to sort of guide them through.
Not necessarily name, but more quality, a focal point, because we saw, I think, a little bit with Dortmund.
Yeah.
You play that pressing game against the better sides. You have to work so hard to create your chances. And if there isn't that guy that will take that chance every single time, you're going to struggle, because, you know, in Serie A they might create 5 chances and they have a bad striker who only takes 1 of 5. In Champions League they might maybe only create 1 of 3, and if that striker isn't that 1 of 3 guy, they just won't score enough goals. That's my problem with them.
Maybe that's the case, I think, for Chelsea, who presumably be the team to beat in that group.
Yeah.
But I feel that Shakhtar have stood still. You know, there's something very inert about the project there. You know that.
Yeah, but you know they haven't. You're saying because they haven't really bought very much over the summer.
Well, over the last couple of years, I mean, they were looking not themselves last season. They were very poor in the Champions League last season.
But I quite like that they're not changing their team too much. I think it's making it more so like, you know, they're establishing a rhythm, sort of.
Shakhtar will probably say the same thing about Juve.
Yeah, perhaps.
I don't know. Well, that they haven't bought and they haven't really progressed.
Well, I don't agree that they haven't bought. I think that they've bolstered their squad very well. They've got Asamoah, who's just brilliant now. Isla, who's yet to start playing, and I think Jovinko is making all the difference. I just think that he might not be, obviously, the player that you would need up top.
That team was crying out
for a star striker.
It doesn't have to be a star, but for real.
Are you saying that Bentner can't do it?
Well, it's a great chance.
It's not a bad signing.
I mean, wasn't he like the kid that everyone loved when he was young? Sort of, he was like this wonderful striker when he was, 17 years old. Didn't he win an award for being the best Danish something or other?
Best Danish striker.
He's never let
when
Denmark
he was young.
down.
He's never let Denmark down.
He's never let Denmark down. I think that's something that's an underrated quality. Just like Elder Postiga's never let Portugal down.
Don't know.
So,
it's not a bad signing. It's not a bad signing, but I'm not sure he'll make the difference against A, the good sides in Serie A, and B, the very good sides in Europe.
Well, we'll see. There's really only Chelsea to beat at the moment, and it's going to be a battle of the midfield between those two creative midfielders. But let's bring in Tancredi Palmieri, our Italian correspondent. Ciao, how are you?
Hello, guys. I'm fine. As you can see, there is still a bit of sunshine in here. I don't know there in London.
You're very red. Have you been tanning?
No, I've been slapping myself before being on air.
That's what most Italians do then, I gather. But what
even girls. Even
girls. Tell me, what do you think about... firstly, let me just ask you a quick question about, do you think that Roma had a wonderful start, had a wonderful game against Inter, or do you think that Stramaccione's team made it easy for them?
Well, when a game like that, when there is a fantastic victory, fantastic win, as Roma did away at San Siro. The first time that Zeman, in his 20 years of career in Serie A, won at San Siro. When something like that happens, both things has to go in the same way. You have to play a good, if not a great game, and you have always also to hope for mistakes of the others. I think that Zeman, that has always been so absolutely not caring about the fans and everything, this time, probably this season, at least as far as we saw, became a bit more cynical, because when it was 1-1 the game, he played a bit more defensive and a bit more counter-attack. At the same time, the mistakes I spot of Stramaccioni, honestly, I mean, he couldn't make worse. Defense was just not compact and playing together. Midfield was just wasting time in the pass. Up in front, the lines weren't connected. Snyder, something like 20 meters over the line of the balls, unable to build up the game of Inter. And whenever he had to receive the pass from the midfield, there were something like 3 or 4 Roma players in the middle that could stop the pass. So there is a lot to work still for Stramaccioni, and better be quick.
It seems like no one is really knowing how to fix this problem, the defensive problem at Inter. But let's talk about the big news in Italy, and that is, of course, Del Piero's choice to go to Sydney.
Bye, Alex. Bye, Alex.
To Sydney FC. I'm not ashamed to say that I might shed a tear. I did shed a tear yesterday when I saw him give a speech in his grey pinstriped suit and talking about his wife. But what do you think? Do you think then he's gone there to, some people accuse me on Twitter of being naive by saying, oh, he's just gone there because it's a payday and he can just relax by the beach? Or do you think it's he really is going there with the idea of raising the profile of Australian football?
I think I can give a bit of insight of this. Back in May, few days after his career with Juventus ended, a few days after the end of the season, I had a chance to sit down for more than half an hour with Alex, having an interview with him. And of course, we spoke about that. He didn't mention Sydney at that time, but he still didn't know about Sydney. It was an idea that came out in the last days. But when I asked him about, when we talked about what he was seeing in his future, I could spot from his words, from what he said and from what he didn't said, that there was the will from him still of playing for the pure pleasure of enjoying football, of enjoying playing, but even pleasing his competitive side. So he just didn't want to go somewhere to earn money, being the guy waving to the crowd and doing his end of career. And Sydney, for the way he's open to life, for the kind of person he is, he's not going to earn some huge money, guys. He's going to earn something like 1.6 million of euros. That's pretty basic for a person like Del Piero. Not for us, but for a person like Del Piero, it is. And so I think that the discover, being the pioneer there in Australia, and the huge enthusiasm, guys, the enthusiasm in Australia for Del Piero is unbelievable. I've been contacted by hundreds of people on Twitter just asking me every hour if there were updates, and I saw the headlines today. I think that it is something that you can't really pay for an enthusiasm like Del Piero will receive.
Tancredi, thank you so much for your input today, but I'm going to have to say goodbye to you now. It's been short but sweet. But that is, I do think that it's a win-win situation. I think they can raise the profile, and then he gets to have a lifestyle choice where he gets to test out himself in a new country. But that is all we have on Italy. Catch us after the break, and we'll be talking about Spain, including Ronaldo, and of course, all the major topics. See you in a bit. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football Show. I'm Mina Rzouki, and I'm still joined by Andy Brassell and Raphael Honigstein. Okay, so I think we all agree on this topic, and it is the topic of the sort of week, Ronaldo, and he is estoy triste, is what he said. So he's sad. Now, he said it's not about the money, and we all don't.
I'm also so sad.
Okay, I think that he has a right. Everyone has a right to be sad. Just because you're rich doesn't mean that you don't have the right to be sad. But anyway, what do you think it's about?
We've clarified that.
What do you think it's about, honestly?
It is at least partly about money. He hasn't had a pay rise in 3 years. In a period in which he's scored more than a goal a game, in which they've wrested the title back from Barcelona, who are one of the greatest teams ever to play the game. I think most people would agree. And he's been a central part of that, and he's worked immensely hard in the meantime. And I think what's really getting him is the fact that he is still working at 2009's rates. Now, that's not normal for a football player. I think the way Real Madrid see it, they've made the initial outlay, so they've done their bit, and I don't think they can really afford to pay him a bit more because they've still got Kaká on the wage bill on exactly the same wages as Ronaldo. So the thing that's stopping them giving him a raise is also the thing that's annoying him the most. So I do think they'll sort it out between them at some point, but that's the crux of the issue.
But then some people said that basically that he is upset because of a Kaká issue. I'm going to read out what he said. He said, "I'm sad and people at the club know why. This is why I didn't celebrate the goals. The issues are professional. I cannot say more. Iniesta, winning the best player in Europe, is nothing to do with it. I'm not going to talk about the issue."
Well, he's saying I'm not talking about it, but he is talking about it. And he's saying I don't want to come public with what's bugging me, but at the same time I'm going to make a huge public gesture to, attract some interest to my employer. So it all doesn't really add up properly. I mean, if it's a contractual dispute, why not let your agent handle it behind the scenes? Why make such a public thing about it? Get the press involved.
But then there was the whole thing about him crying for 20 minutes. Well, I don't know if that's a rumor. It's not been confirmed. But is that really about money?
I don't know if he was crying for 20 minutes. I don't know. I mean, a guy who changes his hairstyle in the middle of a European Championship game, you wouldn't put it past him crying for 20 minutes if he thinks that some other guys...
Oh, come on. I think we know better than most that high definition is very unforgiving. I don't think we can blame him.
True.
But you know what? If it is about money, then you can see why he's annoyed about it. Like, you're saying that you haven't had a raise. You think it's blasphemous that he would ask.
Being annoyed about it and making this a public affair, public event.
So what did you think when Wayne Rooney came out and said at the time, "Oh, I don't know about Manchester United and whether I want to stay here"?
We all knew it was about a very good offer from.
But why is it such a bad thing when Ronaldo does it, but it seems all right when everyone else does?
I think
even at the time, Zidane came out.
I think the fact that he uses the word sad, that is a bit grating, because there's one thing to say, I'm not happy. Contractually, I think that, there should be some movement, but to say I'm sad, I can't celebrate my goals anymore. I mean, come on. do me a favour.
It is like
The
when you do
respect
something.
that he gets, I'm sorry, but the respect that he gets is that he gets his paycheck all the time, at the right time. You know, he's
Which is
entered into a
fairly
contract.
unusual for Spain.
Exactly, he's entered into a
So
contract.
what, he should celebrate that he gets paid on time?
Yeah,
That is being contractual, professional, and that you should be happy with that. I don't see how you can renegotiate your contract next year. You know, maybe he wants, after a new deal, he's still sad. I mean, it's just unprofessional. I'm sorry.
I think he's in a very, very difficult position because I think planning a PR war with Real Madrid is dangerous business. You know, there are a lot of newspapers who have in their pockets who have a lot of news readers who, you know, are going to be against him if he goes out there on a limb and says, look, the club is my enemy at the moment, and he's going to have a problem there. I think part of it, like I said, I think it's not about the money per se. I don't think the actual money itself matters to him. I think what it represents, the respect it represents, is important to him. But I think it's just part of, he must know what he's come in for. And the fact is, when Florentino Perez in 2009 made the decision to get him, to get Jose Mourinho, he was saying, right, fair enough, we're not going to be as sexy as Barcelona, but we want to win. It's not about being the most aesthetically pretty. It's about getting it done. And he's done that part of the bargain. But of course, he's not going to be loved in the same way that Messi and Iniesta and Xavi and those
because
players
these guys would never say, I'm sad, I want a pay rise, I'm going to have to stop celebrating.
We still don't
my
know
goals now.
whether or not it's about the money. So, but someone who is really happy and possibly, you know, a replacement for them should it ever happen that someone comes and takes Ronaldo away. It's of course Falcao, who's been having a terrific season so far, and obviously his father came out and said he would dream of moving to Real Madrid.
Yes, but he's already hedging his bets because he said as a boy he grew up supporting Chelsea, which is interesting because there can't have been that many Colombian boys
Supporting Chelsea.
sort of the early 90s team of Jody Morris and Dennis Wise. But, you know, maybe he's one of those die-hard Chelsea fans.
You know, when it comes to that Chelsea point, yeah, when I was reading other transcripts, and that's not how it said. He said he wouldn't mind going to Chelsea. Everything said something different. One of them said as a child he was a Chelsea supporter. One of them came out and said he just said he wouldn't mind a transfer to the Premier League and Chelsea would be his. So I don't know what was actually said about Chelsea.
Well, either way, I think we're getting away from willful mistranslation that obviously happens a lot in the modern media. I think maybe the call went in somewhere, Dad, stop being so embarrassing. Everyone's been there with their parents, and I think Falcao won't be any different. He can speak for himself. He said he wants to continue in Atleti. He wants to win trophies, and he has been winning trophies there. But I think the way he's developed is interesting. Well, he's won 2 trophies in the last 4 months, and 2 good trophies.
But they're not the Champions League or the league, you know.
No, but I think he knows he'll. Exactly,
but
and he knows he'll get there.
But is he the best number 9 in the world?
He's really close. He's really close. And I think the thing is, if you'd have spoken even maybe a year and a half ago about him even nominally replacing Cristiano Ronaldo at Real Madrid, you would have said it's preposterous. He's just a striker. But in a way, going to Atleti has worked out really well for him. Not just because it's put him in the spotlight in La Liga, but because when he arrived, Atleti fans were, guy's not Kun Aguero, is he? He can't create stuff. He needs, you know, you look at the players they brought in Ada Turan specifically to provide the balls for him because, you know, he needs to get up there and win it in the air, but they're thinking, well, he just scores goals. What else does he do? And because of that expectation, he's been forced to develop even further. So if you saw him in the Europa League final, for example, he'd come deeper and get the ball and go around players. So it's made him become a more complete footballer. And now, of course, no one can completely replace Cristiano. Manchester United found that when he left. You know, you can't replace him with one player, but he's a lot closer to being able to do that than most players in his position would be.
Right, okay, so if you don't think he's the best number 9, just a quick one, who would you think is the best number 9?
I'm not sure about number 9. But in terms of centre forwards, I think maybe Van Persie is still ahead of him in the sort of all-round game that he can bring. Not sure about
just
Zlatan.
Him, yeah? Not Zlatan.
Zlatan, not for me.
Zlatan is the 3rd best striker in my opinion.
Well, Zlatan's a 9 and a 10 at the same time.
Actually, he's the 3rd best player in Europe. In my opinion.
I think if you're talking about pure number 9s, Falcao is close.
Right. Okay, well, join us after the break and we'll be talking more European football. So we'll see you after a few minutes. Hello and welcome back to the World Football Show. I'm Mina Rzouki and I'm your host for today. But we're still continuing with the theme of sadness because something horrific's been going on in Germany. And you can tell us about this because I actually read it on your column for The Guardian. It was wonderful about Hoffenheim and then all the roundup at the bottom. And tell us about this this player who's requested his contract be cut short.
Yeah, this, unlike the Ronaldo story, is actually sad because Kevin Pezzoni, Cologne defender, they were relegated last May. And he's been scapegoated by some of the ultra elements in Cologne, and there were people waiting outside his apartment, threatening him. He's had...
Is this why he looks like this?
Well, this was something that happened to him earlier this year in February. He bumped into someone and he broke his nose. We're not quite sure why it happened. They still haven't found the perpetrator. It might have been football related, but it's not been a good year for him, I think it's fair to say. He's also had threatening letters left on his windscreen. And it got to the point that he said, you know, I no longer feel safe. I feel that I'm under so much pressure on the pitch, or whatever I'll do, I'll get the repercussions. And he's asked the club to release him, and the club have done that. And since then, there's been a big debate because
Is he giving in to the...
No one's coming out very well of this because, you know, the club are saying, of course, we respected his wishes, but at the same time, they're saying, no, we didn't bend to the mob rule. So it's a story that's been very much up for debate, and also, of course, the wider repercussions of what does it say about where German football is going. Are we sort of developing Italian kind of situations where players get serious negative feedback?
See? You all point the finger, but you're all the same. Let's bring in our German correspondent, Titus Chalk. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you a question. Do you think that they are bending to the rules and, you know, and sort of the violence? And is it just a case of, well, they've intimidated us and we're just agreeing to do what they want?
Well, it's certainly been painted here as a capitulation, and I think it's a terrible scenario, really, that they haven't really stamped out a situation that's been building and building at the club. I mean, I'm sure, you know, it's been pointed out by Raphael that it's something that started already at the end of last season. You know, when they were hanging threatening banners up at the training ground and stuff. You know, so it's even on the last day of the season, I think one of the Cologne players, Christian Ronaldo, had to be smuggled out of the stadium in the boot of his parents' car. So I mean, this has been building and building and building and not nipped in the bud. So I think that's really why people are concerned that, you know, there was no decisive action taken by the club a bit sooner. And, you know, it's now come to the point where players had to be essentially chased out of the club, which is, you know, pretty horrible for all concerned.
Do you think this will have a wider effect on German football as a whole, and that people might start sort of thinking twice before joining the leagues?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it is a tiny minority of fans in this case. I don't think it's something that should put players off. I do think the worrying thing is that because it's not been dealt with really, you know, in a sort of hard enough way by Cologne, that it might embolden other fans using the word loosely, you know, other thugs around the country to do the same. You know, if they think they can chase a player they've taken a dislike to out of their club, then, you know, they feel like they might be able to do it now. And I think that's really the danger for the other clubs to deal with now in Germany.
Raf, the supporter group, I think they're called Coloniacs or something like that, which I think is a fabulous name. But anyway, they distanced themselves from this whole act, and they said that whoever's done this is obviously not a supporter and not a fan, because it's not something that they should do. So, do we have any idea who the perpetrators are, and is he taking legal action?
Yeah, he's taking legal action, and he's basically filed a complaint with the police, so it's now a criminal investigation. They're looking for whoever was harassing him, and there is a sense that not just Köln as a club, but also the police perhaps haven't been as vigilant, you know, looking at these various things. And but it is part of a general trend in the sense that, you know, these ultra groups, or at least some of them, feel that it's them rather than the players and the club who really stand for the club. So they think they have the authority to decide who should play, who shouldn't play, and they should also kind of almost be judge and jury when it comes to someone's performances and lack of passion, or whatever you want to call it. And that's a worrying development that has happened, and maybe it's kind of the logical conclusion in a sad sense.
And Titus, one last final question: do you think that this is going to affect their season whatsoever as a team?
Well, I mean, their season couldn't really have got off to a worse start. They're bottom of the second division, and the joke going around Cologne at the moment is, oh, of course Cologne are going to go up into the second league, back into the second league in a season's time. So yeah, I mean, it must be a pretty terrible vibe around the club. I mean, they're no strangers to kind of chaos and tumult at Cologne. But yeah, I mean, it can't really help anyone at the club. It's not really going to unite the dressing room or anything to have this player leave. If Kevin Petoni maybe had stayed and the club had put on a big united front, then perhaps that would be a different story. Perhaps that might have galvanised them somewhat. But I think this is a pretty sort of a bit of a whimper, really. And yeah, I don't think it's going to be good for their season at all.
All right, thank you so much for your input. That's Titus Chalker, our German correspondent. We'll be speaking to you next week. But now let's move on to something a little bit happier, and it's about transfers. Who managed to get the best buys? What's the interesting things that's going on? And of course, we can't talk about transfers without talking about Hulk and Witsel moving to Zenit St. Petersburg for Luciano Spalletti. Great move, Champions League winners. Perhaps not winners, but do you think they can actually make an impression on the Champions League now?
For them, it was a big deal getting to the last 16 last year.
Yeah.
But they've got to show they can step up from that now. They've won the league a couple of years in a row. And I think what's really the wisdom in how they've worked it, we talked about maybe Shakhtar suffering from not having enough for turnover of players. On the other hand, having that stability has really worked for Zenit. They've had a stable team for a couple of years now. They've not signed anyone for cash before this for a couple of years. And I think that's quite an important thing. The fact that not just they've got the money, but they're using it for a select few players who are not going to disrupt the equilibrium of the team, not going to disrupt what's made them so good, but simply add to it.
The question is, how will the equilibrium in the dressing room be affected? Not so much on the pitch, but the off-the-pitch dynamics of such huge names coming in on such enormous wages.
Well,
I think there's always a danger.
The thing is that they're big names, but they're not the biggest. And I think that's quite important. And I think they've obviously looked at these players for a long time. And both Ork and Witsel are fairly humble characters who've worked very, very hard to get their reputations to the point where they are at the moment. So I think they're stand-up guys who are going to help the dressing room as well as who are going to improve the quality of the team.
But all in all, it was like, what, 40 million on Hulk and 30 million also on Witsel. Do you not think that they should have spent some of that money on getting a good centre-back, perhaps a goalkeeper, something more?
They definitely could have done with a centre-back. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Bruno Alves is not really working out.
Alves had such a good Euro that people almost forgot. He's really not been a key player for Zenit for quite a long time now. And so they're kind of stuck with Lomberts there in the middle, who physically you don't really know if he cuts the mustard to help them go further in the Champions League. I mean, when you look at the problems at Malaga, Anderlecht are what they are, Milan have looked pretty weak at their start to the season, even if they won at Bologna at the weekend. You've got to fancy them to come out of that group. And really, it's almost a soft little starter for them while they get their bearings, while they improve the team. I think the defence could betray them going later on. And, they're even like towards the end of the transfer window, they're talking about maybe Arshavin on a cheap deal. They're talking about going back for Nani again. They're not addressing that problem, as you say.
Okay, and just a quick one for you. Van der Vaart, obviously in his move to the Bundesliga, do you think that he can be their saviour?
Well, I guess it's how you define being saved. If it's avoiding the drop, then I think, yes, he will bring just that much. Just a bit of stability that they needed, and perhaps, carrying a bit of the weight or the pressure that other players, because they're either too young or not good enough, can't deal with.
They need a leader.
Yeah, and, he's not necessarily a leader the way he plays, because he kind of drifts in and out of games, but I think he will be... he can be used as a figurehead, and I think he does bring quality into the side. There's absolutely no doubt, because they were lacking that bit of creativity. they sold all the sort of half-decent players of the last couple of years, and the players that come in are either not quite good enough or very, very young. And, you know, with him and Juracek and maybe Milan Badels as well, they just have a bit more quality in the middle, and they should be in a position where they'll finish maybe not top half of the table, but somewhere around 10th, 11th, and then start again. So in that sense, I think, yes, he will save them from sort of inferno and from going down, but I'm not sure they can do much more.
Is it about keeping the fans happy, though? Because, I mean, really, there's a lot to do. They were terrible at Werder at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the move that the fans wanted. They needed to do something in the
They needed to have some sort of name.
Transfer window. And, yes, I think, you know, as soon as they can just get 1 or 2 results, the fans will be happy, because they were really worried that they might be going down.
Well, he may be their saviour, but he's not going to be Netherlands' saviour for this weekend's World Cup qualifier, because he's not been included in the squad. But join us after the break, and we'll be discussing the international matches coming up this weekend. See you in a bit. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show. I'm Mina Rzouki, and I'm joined by Andy Brassell, because Raf has run off. I think he's kind of terrified about Germany's upcoming game against the Faroe Islands, so he couldn't really speak very well. But Andy, I've still got you. No, you haven't deserted me yet. Okay, so all the internationals are coming out, and obviously there are loads of interesting games. Personally, I think Japan and Iraq might be a good one to watch. But let's start off with England, just because it's England and everyone says that we never speak about them. Their chances against Moldova, who, by the way, didn't do that badly against Netherlands, you know, home and away, and they beat Finland, and they're not, you know, they're a small team, you know, but possibly could give them something, considering they have no Wayne Rooney, no Andy Carroll, no Adam Johnson.
No, I think that lack of strikers is a problem. It's almost like replicating Tottenham, I suppose. But I think what will be the pressure really weighing on England going into this one is the fact that they want to get points on the board before they play Ukraine at Wembley, which is on my birthday, incidentally.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. We're not there yet. We have to get through Moldova first. But I think that's really important, because they've got that. They've got the away game in Warsaw against Poland coming up in October. And, you know, we assume that, Ukraine and Poland have had that bump from the championships. And it will be interesting to see how they can take that on. Of course, Ukraine have got that new era, that the post-Shevchenko era happening now. And I think, you know, you look at the way, say, Dynamo Kiev have strengthened this summer, and the fact that it's going to demand a little more from the key players. I think Artem Milevsky is a good example.
But they're still not making that much of a... Are they really making waves in the league at the moment, Dynamo Kiev?
No, they're second at the moment. But what I was going to say is the increased competition on some of those key players. Milevsky is a really good example. He's been fated for ages. Now he's not guaranteed a place in the first 11 at Dinamo, and it's just like he dropped out a little bit. That Marko Devic got ahead of him in the European Championships, because Devic has been so good for Metalurg Donetsk. Metalist Kharkiv, sorry. So basically, he's got to step up from there, and that increased competition can only be good for them. And it's almost as if Shevchenko moving on has given this team a chance to forge its own personality. It's encouraging the young players that they're going to have to step up. Yarmolenko is now becoming a leader of the team. So I think before England get there, they need to have some points.
Okay, so they don't have a striker, and they are a defensively minded squad under Hodgson, and perhaps, you know, they were looking to play a different formation, maybe a 4-2-3-1, something else. Do you think that now they're going to have to stick with the defensive?
No, I think they're going to have to build from there. I think Hodgson could just about get away with it during the European Championships, because it's such short notice. Tournament football's all about getting the results.
But now he has to start playing something more interesting.
Exactly. People want to see that he's building something, that he's building his own personality around the team. And, you know, if you look back to Fulham's Europa League run in 2010, you know, there was enough personality and excitement on that. So people are saying Hodgson's a basic coach. I mean, now, come on, he's capable of a little bit more, and those players are capable of a little bit more. And I think, as you were saying about Adam Johnson before, you know, now he's in this great position that he's moved on to Sunderland. He's going to get more first-team football.
More playing time.
Yeah, he can actually start cementing a place in the England first 11, perhaps. I mean, the fact that Ashley Young's not going to be fit as well for these games, that's a real opportunity for him. And, you know, he's never really let England down. So now he's got a chance to come forward and say, right, I want a place in this first 11. I can help the team step up. I can help the team play more exciting football. So it's a real chance for him.
Well, I trust Hodgson. I watched him a lot for Fulham when he was in charge of Fulham, and of course they beat Juventus, that ridiculous scoreline at the time. But let's talk about a team that I thought had were building and were developing slowly, especially under Gary Speed, but obviously now Wales, perhaps not the team that we thought they were going to be, and it's a tough game that they've got coming up. Who is it that they're facing?
They're facing Belgium.
Belgium, of course, the team with 10 players from the Premier League, you know?
Yeah, that's right. And
you're going to go watch that, right?
I am. I'm going to Cardiff for that. And I'm pretty excited because I think it's probably one of the things I get asked most about by people when they want to talk football about Belgium, and are they going to build a team for the next World Cup, because you know they've got so many fantastic players.
Yeah.
You know, you start with Hazard and then you come on to Witsel, who we were talking about before, Lukaku.
Company.
Yeah, well, Company, I think a different responsibility falls on him, because I think the problem was before they clearly had a lot of good players, but you think
too much individual talent, not enough collective.
Well, you think, where are your senior pros to really lead the team forward?
Yeah.
And those senior pros were basically Timmy Simmons, who's good but reasonably limited, and is still doing a decent job for Nuremberg. But it really falls on Vermaelen and Company. But Company showed not just that he's one of the best defenders in the Premier League last season, but that he's a real leader. Exactly. You know, he's someone who can stand up and speak coherently about stuff. You know, he's the public face of the team. Now, I think that's really important. And now you've got a situation where Lukaku's getting Premier League minutes, where Hazard's used to being a technical leader at Lille, and he's arrived in the Premier League, and he can do that with Chelsea. I think the fact also that he has a coach now. He didn't have a very good relationship with George Leekens, the previous coach, who didn't really know how to use him. And now Mark Wilmots has put a little bit more faith in him. And when they played this friendly against the Netherlands last month, fair enough, it's only a friendly, fair enough. Holland are in a bit of a difficult place at the moment. They look really good.
Well, speaking of Netherlands, they have a game going against Turkey. And I think that this is going to be actually a tough game for them, because they're missing quite a few players. Huntelaar is the chosen striker.
Yeah.
And they're facing a Turkey side. Well, I guess the one thing about that is they don't seem to have a goalkeeper who's out. Their second goalkeeper has physical problems. But they still have a lot of talent in that squad, you know?
They do, but as you say, Volkan is a huge miss.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a huge miss.
He's just a great personality. Fenerbahce really missed him in the Champions League playoffs. You could say perhaps that's the reason they didn't get through. But they've got enough ability to threaten the Netherlands, and I think this is a really good time, as we were saying before, to play the Netherlands, because I think there's a degree of identity crisis there. They're quite circumspect under Van Marwijk, playing with those two defensive midfielders.
Yeah.
Now Van Gaal's come in, got rid of that, and against Belgium they look really open.
Well, this is the problem, though. What do you do? Because I wanted them to be a lot more attacking in Euro 2012, and I hated the fact that he played with that sort of double pivote. But but then, you know, when they go out wide, because their back line is so poor.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And that was always the problem, I think, going into the Euros. The fact that they had these unresolved issues at the back. The fact that, you know, they were waiting on Joris Matthijssen to be fit, who had a terrible season, really, for Malaga, and has now gone back to the Netherlands, and he's playing for Feyenoord this season. I think in terms of defence, you know, this is a point where they could really do with bringing some new blood in. I think Van Gaal could be brave. I think Stefan de Vrij at Feyenoord is someone who's a good example of someone who's strong, comfortable on the ball, and you know that's what the Dutch defence needs.
Well, I still hope that Jethro Williams will be offered a little bit more chance, because I think it's quite unfair to throw him into into the Euro Cup without not that much experience behind him.
You're right, and he got completely hammered for his performance.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. He's
only
18 years old,
yeah, I know. But more interesting is that we have Italy, Bulgaria, and they're going to go and play in Sofia. And I know we were talking about that before because of the KFC.
I think they'll eat well.
Long story. You don't need to know about it. But they're going to be playing with a 3-5-2, which really irritates me, and I don't know why. And actually, I think I know why now, because
they're copying Juventus.
Well, if you speak to Mazzari, he thinks that Juventus is copying them. So who originated the 3-5-2? According to Napoli, it's Mazzari. But no, it's not that. It's because I don't think, I think it's a type of, and I actually have a problem with Juventus using it this season. It's okay to use that formation when you are playing once a week, but when you are in tournament situations and when you are in a sort of a league, when you have Champions League duties, you have, Coppa Italia, you have that for Juventus, it's not a formation that can work a lot because it expends a lot of energy. And it requires exemplary level of fitness, and
of course,
I'm worried about that.
Isn't the idea adaptability, which is something that Prandelli showed he was capable of during the Euros? So I think it's a good option to have, isn't it? And I think also the personality of the national team, especially for a team like Italy, like England, they have mainly home-based players, so it's got to reflect the keynote characteristics of the teams in the league. Really.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're not going to have Chiellini, so they're going to go for Ogbonna, probably at the back, although he's also sort of suffering from an injury. But what's interesting is that we're going to go with Osvaldo and Giovinco up top. Now, this could be a little interesting thing, because ideally I would have loved to have watched Giovinco off a big target man at Juventus, but now he's going to get to do that for Italy.
Well, Osvaldo started the season so well as well with those two fantastic goals. So I'll be really interested to see if he can cement a place in the Italy team. Of course, Balotelli's not there as well, so this is a real chance for him.
So you think that Italy will win?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, there's no Berbatov. Fiorentina are still trying to get their money back on that flight. But that is sadly all we have time for on the World of Football show today. Do join us next week, same time, same place, same football chat. We'll see you then. Take care. In the box, two midfields running up, attack all the time. But he's never really been one to win major trophies. So do you think that, his lack of concentration on defence, although I still think that, he does concentrate on it, it just probably hasn't come out now. But do you think that he will manage it this year to provide a real challenge to Juventus?
Well, I think maybe it's a bit soon to challenge Juventus, because, they've started the season very strongly and they look like they've carried on that team ethic from last year, as we were saying last week. I think the thing that makes me think that Roma can do good things, firstly, I think Zeman coming is very important, because after what happened with Luis Enrique, they need another project that they can believe in, an ideal. I think that's very, very important. But I think the one plus that Zeman's got, even if they've got certain fragility at the back, and that's something they've got to work on, they've got players in midfield who can keep the ball, and that's really, really important. The fact that De Rossi stayed is important. The fact that Pjanic, who play at the weekend, is there as well. You've got Michael Bradley, someone who can really handle himself. You've got a really good mix of players who can help control the game, and I think that will help lead them forward through the rest of the season.
And now he's also integrated his youth players, of course, one of them scoring the goal for Fiorenzi in midfield. And that's probably the best player to kind of have to translate his tactics onto the pitch, because he's going to be listening to everything that Zeman says. But you were talking about Juventus and the fact they obviously won 4-1 against Udinese. It looked like it would be easy just because 12 minutes later the competition ended.
When Berkic went off. Yeah.
Exactly, sent off, really harsh red card, definitely a penalty.
Away from.
Yeah.
I think
so is it? He said it was psychological.
Well, maybe it is, but it's a problem that they certainly have to nip in the bud. Defending properly would help, and as you say, they were very, very vulnerable in the middle, which clearly susceptible to pace. I think particularly you look at the Osvaldo goal, and he's a striker who will bully you if you let him. I think that was certainly the case. The fact that, as you say, they couldn't really handle Totti dropping off. I don't really know whether he was deliberately dropping off, or he did have a very good game, or we just can't keep up with the pace of the other players. But it really suited him, the way it worked out anyway. And but Totti's been doing what he's been doing for over a decade. That they're not exactly not forewarned of what he's like. And of course, Silvestri's got something on his hands, because they're partnered with Ranocchia, who you have to wonder, is he ever going to get any better?
There's just no pace in that back, and they insist on a high line. All of them insist on a high line.
You can play a high line if you have good pressing in midfield, but if you have a high line without any pressing and no speed, no pace at the back, then that's asking for trouble against a good side. Against the weaker sides, it gives you license to dominate the game. They will sit deep, so it's easy to play the high line in that sense. But against a side that A, knows how to deal with the ball, but also is very good without the ball, you're asking for trouble.
Well, how do you think that Zeman's come back? Now, he's always been accused of being sort of this guy that puts out a wonderful team, and it's, you know, so exciting, 4-3-3. He likes to have 3 players, you know, definitely a harsh red card. But do you not think that they were a bit complacent at the back towards the end, you know? Do they still have that team ethic, is my question.
I think the game, as you said, the game was over, so it's tough to keep up that.
Yeah, but Juventus last season would have kept it up until the last minute.
I don't know. I mean, 4-1 is pretty emphatic.
You would be surprised how many people moaned about the fact that they didn't walk away with a clean sheet.
But really, it's more about the fact that poor old Udinese.
Maybe that's a very Italian viewpoint. You know, only 4-1. We can't believe it. They conceded a goal. Terrible.
Udinese were completely dispirited. You know, they needed some sort of
hangover from the Champions League.
Yeah, they needed some sort of bump after that.
Yeah, I think so.
But what about, okay, so they're now the highest goal scoring team in Italy, and they don't have the star striker that they've been moaning about all summer long. Do you think something can be done with Mirko Vucinic and Giovinco? They're both second strikers. Giovinco actually plays more as a prima punta between the two, so as the front one, and Vucinic is just off him on the right.
But they've got players all over the pitch who can score goals. And
Yeah.
I think that's very, very important. You know, you saw even before Berkic went off, like in the first 5 minutes, Lichtsteiner was there in the penalty box, you know, receiving a shot and lobbing over the bar. And, you know, people talk about, say, Mathieu Debuchy in France, but, you know, Lichtsteiner is as good as it gets as far as attacking fullbacks go, and especially attacking right backs go. You know, they've got Vidal, who's developed that more box-to-box element to his game, so he's getting in the penalty box and scoring goals too. They've got Marchisio, Giovinco.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm your presenter, Mina Rzouki. And since we're still without my co-presenter, I'd like to introduce my guests. Raphael Honigstein and Andy Brassell are here with me today. It's been an interesting week of football. Cristiano Ronaldo is sad and he claims it's not about the money. Meanwhile, his mentor has, or should we say his idol, has moved to Sydney FC. I'm still not over the fact that Bentner's at Juve, whilst PSG have finally a reason to celebrate. They won their first match in the league. Guys, let's kick it off and straight to Italy, just because we have to have a few minutes to speak about Zdeněk Zeman. What did you guys make of that game? I know it's old news, but it's still something that we continue to talk about because it was possibly one of the most enthralling games you've seen.
I'm just happy that you pronounced the name so carefully, his last name. But no, it was very enthralling. It was very exciting. Of course, it was a big test for Roma and his new Roma and his way of playing. But I'm not sure if it told us more about Roma or more about Inter.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, Inter just looked very shambolic, and you wonder if that really was a test after all.
Do you think that it was just a case of they made it just so easy, and especially made it easy on Totti, who likes to drift into the middle, and considering the fact that they thought most of the action would happen down the wing, so they sort of left the centre free. Therefore, you had wonderful vertical passes going through, and you could see that from the second goal. So do you think that, you know, Stramaccioni has a lot to worry about with Inter, or do you think he just simply got his tactics wrong for this game?
I think he has something to work on. Of course, he has to become tactically adaptable as well. But I think, you know, you could get a false impression off the first game against Pescara because it's quickly becoming clear that Pescara are going to be very weak, talking to Zeman, moving on, and the players they lost like Immobile, Verratti, of course, who's doing a really good job at PSG now. So I think it's going to take time, but I don't think all Roma's problems are solved either. I think there's work to do there, but you know, I think it's going to be an entertaining journey.
You know what? One of the actual newspapers wrote that the greatest tactical mistake that Stramaccioni did was not to expose Roma's fragility at the back. Do you think that's true? They looked very exposed.
Well, I'm sure he tried to, although I don't think he went into the team meeting saying, you know, do not expose Roma's back. You know, that's not the game we want to play. So I think that Roma's game was just caught an Inter side that don't know how to deal with that. And I think it really is both a reflection of a game plan coming to fruition in Zeman's case, but also Inter perhaps not being collectively settled enough to come up against a side that has both individual and collective quality. They look very short.
So what do you think this says about Inter? Do you think that this is something to worry about, or?
Well, I think there's a vast contrast between the home form and their